up to $1 million a year that comes from Conservative Party coffers. Wright had ties to the hidden fund for years.
Traditionally attend question periods on Monday, and then on Tuesday he leaves for a Europe.
This is not democratic. This is actually a dictatorship. So we do not have the right to be pointing the fingers at other people's human rights violations.
The government refused to accept his conclusions.
It would be our hope.
With that one, we're back again. Hi there, I'm Darin Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
It is so great to be on video radio today because we caught the Conservatives with their hands in the cookie jar.
Yes, once again, the CBC has come up with stuff that the Prime Minister would rather we didn't know.
Yes, they would rather that we forget. In fact, they assume we don't have the internet. But since we have the internet, we're capable of bringing you clips just like this.
Has the Prime Minister seen the check to be able to affirm in this House that he's sure that that check was drawn on Nigel Wright's personal account?
I can certainly assure the House, Mr. Speaker, that none of this money has come from the PMO or from any government account.
So many questions, and now another mystery. CBC News has learned that as Stephen Harper's chief of staff, Nigel Wright had exclusive access to a secret fund in the Prime Minister's office. Up to $1 million a year that comes from Conservative Party coffers. Wright had ties to the hidden fund for years. Since 2004, he was a director of the Conservative Fund of Canada, the party's fundraising arm that provided millions to the clandestine PMO account. The fund is off limits to outside scrutiny by the Auditor General and even Elections Canada. What it's used for is unclear. In a written response to CBC News, Conservative Party spokesman Fred Delory said only, "The Prime Minister at times incurs expenses that are best paid by the party." Asked if that could include Wright's payout to Duffy, Delory replied, "No funds were used for that." That doesn't satisfy the opposition parties.
When you put two and two together and the man who's in charge of the secret fund in the Prime Minister's office writing a secret check to a politician, and none of this was ever supposed to come out, it raises many red flags.
The government is also adamant the fund won't be used to reimburse Wright.
And there will be no attempt, as the Prime Minister has said, to generate funds in any other way that might compensate.
There's nothing new about prime ministers tapping into party funds to pay for partisan activities, and there's certainly nothing illegal about it. But what makes this secret fund different is just that. It's secret. And all the people we talked to said that's a first. This in a government that promised openness and accountability.
One of the reasons why I love coming into work is you're bringing me that.
I mean, well, you gotta love the fact that he's trying to take over the CBC, and they seem to be fighting back just a little bit.
Yeah, mess with my public funding, and yes, indeed, they start telling the truth all of a sudden. We really wish the CBC would have started doing this 2 years ago. We probably would be in a better condition than we are, but it's nice to see journalism occurring and the secrets coming out.
Yeah, Mr. Transparency, right?
Yes, accountability. We will lead by accountability. Secret $1 million.
So do we call him Mr. Stephen Opaque Harper?
Mr. Decepticon himself, back in the news again. Now check this out. He deked to Europe. Let's run it.
The House is scheduled to sit until June 21st. However, the final vote on the budget will take place after question period tomorrow. It could rise as early as Tuesday, so that's one thing we'll keep our eye on. However, the Prime Minister isn't likely to be in the House of Commons until now after the summer break. The reason for that is he doesn't traditionally attend question periods on Monday, and then on Tuesday he leaves for a European trip, so leaving behind the Nigel Wright, Mike Duffy, Senator Pamela Wallin, Senator Patrick Brazeau, as well as Brent Rathgeber headaches here in Ottawa. So he'll head to London first, and there he will address the British MPs and Lords, and this is the first time a Prime Minister has done so since William Lyon Mackenzie King back in 1940. 2044. Then he heads to Paris. He'll meet with President Francois Hollande, and then there they'll have discussions about trying to move forward the Canadian European Union Free Trade Agreement. That's one thing they've been working on for quite some time. However, it's had some stumbling blocks. He's going to ask for some help from Hollande to do that. Then he heads to Ireland for G8 meetings. So he'll be very busy in Europe, but again, avoiding the headaches here at home.
Now, those are two awesome clips to start things off.
I just wonder what kind of advice he's going to give the lords and ladies of the House.
Yeah.
I mean, how to be a complete screw-up?
It's embarrassing when Baird's over there in the UN talking for us. That's embarrassing. Him going and talking in Britain for us. But to lords and ladies and whatever, who cares?
Yeah,
I mean, all you're doing is pandering to the rich, a bunch of guys who were born rich and got a title.
Meanwhile, he's actually going over for the G8 next week. That's the real reason he's there, to discuss how to wreck our economy even further.
Later on, we've got in the shows, we've got updates on protests coming up. They're arresting people in the UK right now and cleaning up, and I mean cleaning up. It's kind of embarrassing, eh?
And, of course, our economic eggs are still all in one basket.
Yes.
And, of course, that would be oil.
Oh,
and,
wait a second.
What if we had an oil spill?
Wait a second. What if we needed a Coast Guard to jump into action and do something? If we had a clip that discussed that, it would help out right now.
Oh, wait.
Wait.
The honourable member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
Well, for 3 years, Conservatives have known about inadequate equipment for oil spills and have done nothing. Our Coast Guard doesn't have the capacity to clean up even a single supertanker spill. Yet Conservatives want British Columbians to accept a massive increase in tanker traffic. Just trust us clearly is not good enough, Mr. Speaker. Why has this minister failed to act when we have such a shoddy oil response capacity? And why is he forcing British Columbians to pay the huge price when things go wrong?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Speaker, industry is the first responder to its own oil spills under the pollute or pay principle. The Coast Guard, of course, Mr. Speaker, is the lead agency for ensuring appropriate response to ship source spills in Canadian waters. On March 18, 2013, the government announced the world-class tanker safety initiative that included an investment in the incident command system for the Coast Guard. This responds directly to the recommendations from the 2010 CESD audit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So the end-all and be-all is that the oil industry is self-regulating and...
just trust them.
Trust them.
Trust the oil industry, yes, to do the first response to oil spills. How well did that work out in the Gulf of Mexico?
How well did that work out with the Exxon Valdez? They're still looking, if they dig into the ground, the oil's still there.
And there's still huge problems in Arkansas where they had that other Keystone Pipeline spill.
In the residential neighborhood. Are you talking about the one where they're still not allowed to go back to their homes and it's impossible to clean up?
Yeah, that's the one.
I got a feeling they're going to be buying a lot of houses. Okay, I got a feeling there's a whole bunch of people going to get brand new houses out of that one. But once again, the Harper government, irresponsible as ever.
Always.
Okay, and I'm saying that straight out. This is their byline.
They're like a rogue government.
We're becoming a banana republic under a rogue government. Come on, kids.
Yeah, really?
Chantal Hubert right now is actually speculating that Harper will take the summer break to reconsider his career and maybe leave politics.
Yeah, I know, but we need to get the party out of politics.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a figurehead.
We'll be talking about political reform. Coming up in major documentary that we've got coming up. Make sure you pay attention to that one. Called it The Concept of Democracy. Freeloaders is what it is. What do you got, brother?
Well, Harper's done so well to advance Canada's image in the world stage.
Check it out.
Canada's relationship with UN countries continues to be shaky. This week, Canada underwent a universal periodic review at the UN's Human Rights Council in Geneva. Many UN members raised concern about Canada's waning human rights record, especially when it comes to Aboriginal rights and racism. Analysts observe that rather than address the substantive criticisms made against Canada by UN members, Canada's government has chosen to deflect attention away from them by focusing on the human rights record of the states making the criticisms. In effect, rather than acknowledging the grave human rights situation faced by Canada's poor, the Harper government is seeking to shoot the messenger.
This is not democratic. This is actually a dictatorship. So we do not have the right to be pointing the fingers at other people's human rights violations.
Analysts argue that Canada's neoconservative government, which looks to pro-Zionist groups like UN Watch for advice, has come to embrace Western exceptionalism and reject multilateralism. It was recently exposed that the UN's Special Rapporteur on the rights of Indigenous peoples was being blocked from entering Canada by Canada's controversial Foreign Minister, John Baird. However, this week, as the world was honing in on Canada's human rights abuses, Baird's spokesperson in Geneva, Alyssa Goldberg, relented and indicated that 3 UN special rapporteurs will be admitted to Canada, a development which offers a ray of hope to those thousands of Canadians who have had their human rights violated by the Harper government. Joshua Blakeney, Press TV, Calgary.
Now, Joshua Blakeney there, even though his verbal style is a little bit out there, I really like the way he just says it straight out. Instead of owing up to the fact that you're allowing poverty to continue.
We point the finger at other people.
Yeah. Okay.
They're doing it too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, that guy's leaving his kids to starve to death. I mean, they were vilifying Gaddafi and, openly in the UN when that guy was paying for everyone's health care. He was giving people free student loans, free housing, $10,000, $50,000 if you have a kid. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, talking about the husband and wife get a year off. That was
buying a married couple their first home.
Yeah. Okay.
Free education.
Yeah, and if you weren't hired, if you got a degree and you didn't find a job in that field,
yes,
you were paid that wage.
But of course, he was resisting the dollarification of the world.
Yeah.
And he had to be destroyed for that.
Yes, he was evil because he refused the central banking system. And if you'll take a look at it, the final countries that they are invading are the countries that do no longer have central banks.
Exactly.
But of course, Canada can do no wrong.
Now, the result of allowing the UN special rapporteurs into Canada was they generated a report that the Harper government really didn't like.
Check this out.
For decades, the alarm has been sounded about First Nations not having proper access to healthy food. The UN Special Envoy for Food Security acknowledged that as a serious problem, but said they're not alone.
We have in this country more than 800,000 households who are considered food insecure, representing between 2 and 3 million individuals, and that we have close to 900,000 people depending on food banks.
During his 11-day tour, DeShooter also visited half a dozen cities. He came armed with statistics, saw the problem firsthand, and still, the government refused to accept his conclusions.
It would be our hope that the contributions we make to the United Nations are used to help starving people in developing countries, not to give lectures to wealthy and developed countries like Canada. And I think this is a discredit to the United Nations.
But he was actually here on the invitation of the government. He met with a number of people who depend on food banks to feed their families.
Food is almost non-existent. My monthly income from 3 jobs is just under $2,000 a month. That's my take home, what I can use towards taking care of my kids.
DeShooter says he'll take his findings and prepare a report which he'll eventually present to the UN Human Rights Council. DeShooter wants a national food strategy, which many groups have been calling for. But perhaps what is new is the international attention the issue is attracting, which the government clearly does not welcome.
Of course, that report came out last year, and since then, the Canadian government has barred the UN from coming in and inspecting the poverty that the Harper Conservatives are creating. I'm Darin Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
We've got follow-up reports coming up. Freeloaders is on the way. We're going to be talking about Occupy Monsanto and
the police state.
Yes, the NSA coming up right here. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you get out there, get a sign, get on the street, and do something. We'll be right back.